Hello, Abe. Abe, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
I'm also well, thank you.
Good. We're in New York now, so
Oh, very nice.
I'm just gonna see if we can learn a little bit tonight.
Very nice, very nice. We're here in LA.
Okay. Sure it's nicer in LA than it is here.
Yes, regards to Eva.
Thank you very much.
Do very well. And the tonight's year in Hilchot Niddah will be learned Leilu Nishmas Leah Bas Yitzchak. We are on page 34.
What?
I said we are on page 34,
Oh, wait a minute. I've got the wrong.
volume 7, page 34.
Yeah. Okay.
So last week we understood that there's something called Niddah D'Oraisa, and then there's Niddah Midrabanan. And we, just to review the Shulchan Aruch on top of our Torah, Ein Aisha mitama v'lo asur l'bayla shetargi sheyetze dam mitzara. Min Torah, a woman is not considered a Niddah unless she, besides the blood, has some kind of hargasha. Now we're going to work on the definition of hargasha. Means a feeling. The Chachamim gazru al kol ketem shenimsa begufo bebegudeha shitmei avasur l'bayla afilu lo yagisha. Now let's not forget that the Chachamim, which we're going to learn in detail, have made a chumrah that anytime a woman finds a spot of blood, either on her flesh or on her begodim, we're not talking about putting a bedika cloth inside her vaginal canal and checking. We're talking about, let's say she finds a spot of blood on her underwear or on her thigh. That's called a kesem. And even though the Chachamim have made a gzeira that as long as the kesem has a certain size and a certain coloration, she will be usher to her husband, even though there was no hargasha, even if at that time when she finds a kesem, afilu bodkatzma matzata hayra, she goes ahead with a bedika cloth and checks herself, does an internal examination, and doesn't find any blood there. So we have a woman with a kesem spot, no hargasha. She does a bedika and she doesn't find any bleeding. She would still be tamei mechachamim, and utzricha hefsek tara. In order to become permitted to her husband, she would have to be boidik herself to shetidik atzma v'timatzit tahara, and then v'achakach timon yeshiva nikiyim. Yeah, she'd have to count 7 clean days chutz miyam mitzvah, separate from the day that she found the blood. But the ikar adin dvar Torah is ad shetargish. Kesem only provides tuma midrabanan. We'll see because of that, there's a number of leniencies that apply to a kesem. But let's try to understand what hargasha means. We've established that a woman assumes the status of Niddah by Torah law only if she experiences the physical sensation that she is discharging from her uterus. That means, just like someone knows what, let's say when they're urinating, there's a certain sensation when you begin to open up and urinate. There's a hargasha. So it sounds like in the time of the Gemara, women felt their uterus open. There was a feeling of an opening, like to begin to, when their blood started to flow. What exactly constitutes a hargasha, such that she will become ritually impure midaraisa? The commentaries in poskim identify 3 symptoms that may be associated with bloody discharge. So the Truma Sadeshan, who's a Rishon, Hargasha is defined as a sensation by a woman that her uterus is opening, as is evident from the description of the Hargasha in the following question. In the Shilas and Shuvas of the Truma Sadeshan, he was sent a question. Isha shehirgisha ba'atzma sheniftach mikora lahotzi dam. A woman felt the opening of her uterus open. V'halcha ubad katzatzma miyad. But she went to check herself with a bedika cloth. She found a whitish discharge, not a bloody discharge, white. The low love and lagamri, not completely white. Kamara's beged love and shenafel love ava, like a white handkerchief that was used to wipe up a dusty table. Shehuka livnu susa. The white handkerchief is not so white. The question was asked, Yesh l'tara isha olo. Is such a woman, she doesn't see any blood, she had a hargasha. So is a hargasha with this feeling of an opening without bleeding, does that cause her to become a tummy? Now, the Truma Sadesh is not going to answer that question, but from the question, you see that one hargasha at least is the feeling of the cervix opening. The Shulchan Aruch quotes this understanding of hargasha in the continuation of the halacha that we quoted before. The im hirgisha sheniftach mikora lahotzi dam. If a woman experienced this sensation of her cervix opening, ubatka achakach v'lo matza klum, and later on she put a bedika cloth inside and didn't find anything, still yesh misha omer shehi tmeya. There is an opinion to say that hargasha alone, without blood, would make her tummy. Now,
means that it's going to come eventually, very shortly.
yeah, but it's a chiddush. It's a chiddush to say that she would become a tamei just by hargasha. You understand? That's a chiddush to say. Now, we don't know what the status. The case that we just discussed, we're going to discuss that later. But right now, regardless of the status of the woman in question, it would seem from the case described by both the Truma Sadeshan and the Shulchan Aruch, they both use this language of niftach makara lahotzi dam, a feeling of her uterus opening, that a woman may indeed experience a hargasha, the physiological sensation of the opening of her cervix, in concert with the discharge of blood. So this is possibility number one, that hargasha with bleeding is this hargasha. Then number two, bodily shuddering. A second possible definition of hargasha is alluded to by the Gemara itself in Niddah. The Gemara states plainly that a woman experiences a physical sensation when she discharges blood. Now, I'm going to read the footnote here and explain it. The Gemara is explaining a dispute between Shammai and Hillel in the first mission of the Maseches Niddah with regard to issues not of being permitted to the husband, but rather Tuma and Tahara. Shammai holds that a woman with a Niddah causes food such as Truma to become impure only from the time when she sees blood during an internal examination. While Hillel holds that she renders all Truma handled since her previous internal examination, Tameh, she may have bled in the interim, but it not yet emerged from the body on its own. This is the concept of daya shaita or not. So for example, a woman on Saturday morning, let's say on Sunday morning, does a internal examination with a bedika cloth and finds blood. According to Beis Shammai, anything she now touches going forward becomes ritually tameh. But we do not matame anything going backwards. Now, let's say this woman last checked herself the previous Sunday. And for 7 days, she doesn't check herself. She also doesn't see any blood. And the next Sunday morning, she checks herself with the bedika cloth and finds blood. Beis Hillel will declare impure everything that this woman touched going backwards to the last time she did a bedika. So because technically she could have bled Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. She just didn't see it. So misafek, they retroactively, this is talking about foods that she touched. They're not relevant today because we don't deal with Tumah V'Tahara.
If a woman is a Niddah on a certain day, she checks herself and she bled.
Beis Shammai hold,
Base Hillel.
you go backwards to the last time she checked. So let's say she checked herself Friday morning.
Yes.
So she would be tum. Any food that she touched between Friday morning and Sunday morning would be tummy. Let's say she checked herself Friday morning, she was clean. There's a possibility that the moment after she may have bled and not seen it. So according to Beis Hillel, you got to go backwards and be metame to the last time she had a clean bedika. That's an argument in Masechta Niddah, the first Mishnah, Dayashaita or not, Machlokas Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. It doesn't apply to us here now because in the Hilchot Niddah Bizman Hazeh, we deal mainly, is a woman prohibited to her husband or not? So it's only going forward that it's going to be a problem according to both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. But here is where the body shuddering comes back. There in the Gemara it says, "V'bay Sema Hainu Tamid Shammai." You know why Shammai says you don't have to go backwards? Hoil v'isha margeshes ba'atzma, because she has a sensation if she experienced flow of blood, and since she didn't have that sensation a week ago or 3 days ago, why should we be matame her going backward? What does Hillel say to that? You know what? She had a sensation, but maybe it was a sensation, like a sensation of urine flow. And therefore it's not clear that maybe she did have a Niddah sensation, maybe she didn't. So according to Beis Hillel, you got to go backwards. The Rambam clearly understands this sensation, which he mentions in the context of seeing blood when urinating, as a potential reason for becoming impure, to refer to a shuddering of the body. Says the Rambam in Hilchot Tzurba, Ha'isha she'ishtina mayim, a woman who urinates, the yotza dam imei raglayim, and she has blood in her urine, bein she'ishtina v'yomedes, whether it happened while she's standing, bein she'ishtina v'yosheves, or whether while she's sitting. In each case, harezu tahora. Vafilu here gishkufa, even if her body felt it, v'nizda azah, and she shudders. Eina chosheshes, we're not concerned that she's tamei. She'argashas mei raglayim izeh. It's just a sensation of urinating. She'ein mei raglayim in acheder. Urine doesn't come from the uterus. V'dam zeh, the blood that she's seeing in her urine, is going to be either dam makahu, bechalchulis, either it's like coming from her colon, or beklaya, or from the kidney. So the Rambam, who was a doctor, understood. They could have said also from the bladder, but they didn't really know that kind of anatomy at that time. So far, we have two sensations. We have a sensation of a woman feeling like her uterus is opening. We have like a shuddering sensation. There's a third sensation, the sensation of a liquid flow. The third approach to defining Argasha is offered by Rav Yechezkel Landau in his Tshuva Niddah B'Yehuda. Those of you who have visited Prague probably visited the shul that the Niddah Yehuda was the Rav in. It's one of the major shuls. They take you on a tour. He was the chief rabbi of Prague for many years. He was the posek hador for all world Jewry from like 1750 to 1800. The Tzlach, which is his commentary on the Gemara, and the Shilas of Niddah B'Yehuda were he was one of the preeminent achronim of that time. Very interesting. Rav Landau begins to deal with a lot of modern problems. Think about it, 1750, the Industrial Revolution is beginning, scientific revolution, things are known more, and some of the more modern halachic issues begin to be dealt with by the Niddah B'Yehuda. Rav Landau holds that a feeling of liquid flowing in the cervix is also defined as a menstrual sensation, a hargasha. Ume'atanu chalomar, l'chol ha'poskim be'in hargasha min haTorah. Everybody holds that in order for you to be considered a Niddah min Torah, it's not enough to see blood. You need blood with a hargasha. Umay niu hargasha. The question is, what is this hargasha? Sheyagishu im hargashas psichas hamakor, to feel the opening of the cervix opening. O af hargasha zivas davar lach b'tzara. Maybe she feels something moist in her flesh. Nira lanias daiti, the af hargasha zivas davar lach chashav hargasha. So, according to the Niddah Yehuda, a woman who starts feeling a sensation of moistness in her body part, that's enough of hargasha. You don't need to feel this, whatever this feeling is when the uterus is opening, but feeling a wetness in her body. Like, somebody who's incontinent of urine, for example, they can feel that they're wet. So it's the same thing here. Seeing blood and feeling a sense of wetness in the genitalia, for the Niddah Yehuda, that would have fit for a hargasha. Now this is not going to be accepted by everybody. That's in some ways a chumrah. It's a chumrah, because now this woman's going to be a Niddah min Torah. So this was strongly dismissed as too much of a chumrah by the Chassam Sofer. Right? The Chassam Sofer operated till about 1820, 1830, that period of time. So he was right after the Niddah Yehuda, and therefore the Chassam Sofer could take issue with the Niddah Yehuda. Omnam, says the Chassam Sofer, Geter hargasha hayisi mekel. He wants to be mekel regarding this. Davka kishegisha psichas peh makor mamish. In order for it to be considered a hargasha and make her a niddah midoraisa, she has to feel this sensation of the uterus opening. It's not enough to just feel wetness. Kepashtus l'shona shel trumas hadeshen. Isha shergisha sheniftach makora. V'daili lachmir b'tzichas peh makor mamish. V'lo bargasha kal azivas davar lach. Ach azera iti divrei agon b'Niddah Yehuda shekasa. The Nira lo shelo kedas kata koidmin. The Niddah Yehuda went beyond the earlier generations, like the Trumas Hadeshen, who wanted who said only psichas hakever. Kever is a grave, but the uterus is referred to as the kever. Ela hargashahi zivas davar lach. The Niddah Yehuda wanted to say that that's a hargasha as well, feeling moist. Lo chashla bishum raya merayoser in his cars le'el v'litchos. So he didn't dismiss any of the proofs that the Chassam Sofer brings to argue against that. So of course, he says he doesn't really agree with that svar of the Niddah Yehuda. So this position of the Chassam Sofer is accepted by the current poskim. For example, Rav Shmuel Vosner in the Shevet HaLevi. Rav Vosner just passed away a few years ago. Rav Vosner adds that even the Niddah Yehuda would require experiencing the blood leaving the uterus, not simply feeling the presence of moisture after it's emerged. It means Rav Vosner is interpreting the Niddah Yehuda to say that the hargasha is both the psichas hakever and a moist feeling. Says the Shevet HaLevi, Be'inyan isha shemargifas zivas davar lach, a woman feels moist. Ha'ikar b'zeh kedas Chassam Sofer, Yoredeya. Delavi hargasha. We follow some Sofer that a woman who just feels moistness there, that's not considered a hargasha. The Gamla Dasa Machmirim, Alo Kosa B'Chavas Das, the Iker Debi Inin Shatargi Zivim Mifnim Samach L'Makor, that if you already feel a moisture, that might be enough. Aval Rova Noshim Bizmanenu Margishim Rak Balachus. Most of our women only feel passive moisture. They don't feel anything near their uterus. Now, what does Rav Moshe Feinstein say? He corroborates the position that even the Niddah Yehuda does not define the sensation of a liquid flow as hargasha when she feels something only after it has emerged from her body. Aval kol zeh b'hargasha yetzia me'aguf. She's got to feel it from inside of her. But if she feels between her legs, externally, that's not argosha. Any moisture that she feels after it came out of her opening, that's not shaykh to say that it's argosha. No matter how somebody gets moisture there, you would feel that, but that's not a ride that's hargasha regarding niddah. So hargasha after Yehuda and the Chavis Das the Machmirim, who bargasha b'shasa yitzia shemargeshes eich sheyetze me'aguf. This is a sensation that she feels as it's emerging from her private parts. Avozel levado sagi l'didon. That's enough for us if a woman feels moisture coming out from there. Because our women is lo biki anashi leida ma'ayanein. They don't know where this discharge is coming. Is it from the uterus? Is it from the bladder? Is it from the vagina? If she feels a sensation of blood flowing or moisture flowing, that's enough. But if she only feels moisture after it comes outside, he says the blood that she sees only feels moisture like on her thigh. After it's emerged, that would be treated like a kesem, which we said is rabbinic, would not be this hargasha midoraisa. The Pischei Tshuva summarizes these possibilities. Number one, v'da, the shlosha b'nei hargashas yesh, li'inyan shetehei tmeya midoraisa, which would make a woman tomei niddah midoraisa. Number one, shenizdazdeya gufa, her body shudders, k'moshe of a Rambam, which we learned, or sheniftach mikora, like the Truma Sadesha, right? She feels the opening of her uterus open. Bashlishis nimtza b'shus achroinim. That's the achroinim, like the Niddah Yehuda, the Chavis Das, versus the Rav Moshe and Rav Vosner, that kishemargesha shedover lach zav mimena bifnim. If she feels a moisture flowing on the inside, and then he says, ayin b'shuvas Niddah Yehuda, Sefer Chavis Das, omnam b'shuvas chasam sofer choylek al zeh become b'shuvas. And he points out that the chasam sofer felt that just feeling a moist feeling on the inside is not enough as a hargasha. Okay, we've learned the background. What does it mean in our day?
So during the time of, what's his name? The one that just mentioned, the strict one?
The
one-
Niddah Yehuda.
Yeah. So during when he lived, and especially in that town, you had to follow him. Is that correct? You couldn't go to another Rav somewhere else nearby. Were you allowed to?
Jerry asked the question, if you lived in Prague at that time, did you have to go to the Niddah Yehuda? Could you go to another Rav? Well, every town had a Mora de Asra. Every town had a Rav that was appointed to be the Rav of the city. And he usually was the Rosh Beis Din. And yes, everyone lived under that Rav's dominion and authority. Rabbanim were very careful. Let's say if you came to ask a question, but you lived from another city, he might not have taken your question. He would have demurred and deferred to the existing authority in that town. Now, do women nowadays still experience the types of hargasha described by the Gemara, Rishonim, and Achronim? The Darchei Tshuva reports that it has long been assumed that women no longer experience the sensation of the Truma Sadeshen. He's the one that talked about that feeling of the cervix opening. V'chein kosav b'chidushei Ramban, Reish Perek HaMapolos, ukvar hu gadli mipnei noshim zekeno she'achshav enon margishos psichas piyam mokor klal. Wow. So the Ramban, writing in 1200, says that he's spoken to elderly women, and the women already 800 years ago stopped having this sensation where they could recognize that the uterus opening is opening. Some achronim, such as the Tzitz Eliezer, Rav Eliezer Waldenberg, who passed away within 20 years, have noted that these cited comments do not appear in the writings of the Ramban. Rather, their sources from the achronim. Accordingly, some have challenged this position and claim that women can or do have this sensation of the uterus opening. He says, in all due respect, it's written mitoch shkia gasa. A huge mistake has been made. If you read the words of the Ramban himself, he never said these things. That sha'achshav in margishos psichas pi amokar klal. Ulashono shel shut shuras shai. The language of the tshuva shura shai that confuse the darchei tshuva. Ulafizek kemuvan ki advorim shonin kvar legami kishim izbar shelo yotz mipi Ramban. Of course, we have to understand these things much differently if we know that the Ramban himself didn't say this. V'sheyotz mipi abal shura shai v'atzmo kvishu gadlo mipi noshim zekenus. The shura shai was a commentary on the Ramban. If he said it and not the Ramban, it's a different thing. If some elderly women told the Shura Shai that they don't experience this anymore. So first of all, these elderly women who told the Shura Shai this, they're not the majority of women. And therefore, and based on their words, to reinterpret the whole halacha that women don't have this hargosh anymore, it's not correct. He says, look at all the hundreds of tshuvas and places in the Shulchan Aruch where women are asking questions about this sensation. So it's clear. He says people do experience this sensation. Despite this claim that women still experience hargosh, it still seems that in our time, most women do not experience the sensations mentioned above. Other than possibly what Niddah Yehuda said, where women experience like a moisture. Now, that's a big thing. Meaning, if women don't feel the shuddering, if women don't feel the opening of the uterus, so that's a possibility then that the women are not nidos minatora. Right? Does that mean that their regular menstruation does not render them niddah midaraisa? Because as we've learned tonight, you're only a niddah daraisa if you have the bleeding with these sensations. Well, if it's true that our women don't have these sensations anymore, are they not nidos daraisa? So a number of approaches have been taken to this question by the achronim and contemporary poskim. One approach not discussed in the text here is the possibility that all women today who do not experience hargasha, in fact, are considered niddah only on a rabbinic level and not biblically. That's not the normative opinion, but there are opinions like that. According to the approach taken by the Tzitz Eliezer, based upon the Pardes Rimonim, any symptoms that women have upon experiencing their period qualify as hargasha as well. For example, our women, they do get cramps, they might have back pain, they have other symptoms. So according to Tzitz Eliezer, in our time, bleeding associated with those symptoms would be considered hargasha. And therefore, in a chanami, our women would be nidos midoraisa. Kavonas HaRambam mevurar b'zeh shetargish ba'atzma mifahekes umitateshes v'chosheshes pikrisa v'shipula me'eha. For example, they yawn, they sneeze, they have indigestion, they have aches or pains in the stomach. V'kayotz u'meros elu, that the Rambam in Hilchot Isurei Bia, Tumei Yimin HaTorah, says the Rambam. V'rei borad al kol ponim achas mikol hargashas ha'elu yeshlan gam l'neshei didon lifnei on kabbalas veston. When our women begin to become nidos, they have some of those symptoms. Those symptoms, even though they don't exactly mimic what the Gemara discussed as Hargasha, the Rambam already said that those are Hargasha-like symptoms, and they create Nidus min Torah. Now, a second approach is taken by Rav Moshe Feinstein, that we accept the opinion of the Niddah Yehuda, in that he said that a feeling of moisture within her body is already a Hargasha and would make her a Niddah min Torah. But women today are unable to differentiate between the sensation of blood leaving the uterus and blood oozing out of the body and causing moisture on one's garments. Therefore, we should be machmir and consider any such sensation to be a bona fide Hargasha. Our women are not that expert, so we assume that they have the proper Hargasha. That means when she feels moisture in her private parts, she doesn't know, is it from the uterus? Is it from the vaginal canal? Has it left her body? She can't tell. But she'enaf kamina be a disaish of Hargasha meichan bo'adam. Kivan shargasha zivas davarlach nachshav Hargasha. He says that since the Niddah Yehuda said that feeling of a moisture is enough, so that's all we need. She doesn't have to know where it's from. Right? We are much worse than 200 years ago. And we certainly can't find where it's from. Because the Niddah Yehuda, they discussed all of that. But we are, 200 years later, 250 years later, we're even in a worse situation. Therefore, we have to be machmir that what they felt is a true Hargasha. So we have either, according to the Tzitz Eliezer or Rav Moshe, that no, our women today are becoming nidos midoraisa. Third approach is taken by the Aruch HaShulchan, that women do experience Hargasha today, but are not necessarily attuned to detect it. In his opinion, the sensation of the uterus opening is parallel to the minor discomfort that one has experiencing when urinating. In Hargasha, muvenes b'pshitas hatoisves, shamakom sasum, normally the cervix is closed. Uchashadam yotze, when blood flows during the menstrual cycle, niftach, the cervix, now it doesn't open as much as during labor and delivery, but there's an opening for the blood to come out. V'hayel alahargish ad kablashono. The woman should have felt it. The Gemara compared that feeling like to when you start urinating. Like a little pain when you start urinating. The same kind of discomfort when the uterus opens. The same, when you urinate, you might also experience a little discomfort. Everyone can sense that. Even a man can feel that when he starts urinating, it might be a little uncomfortable until it starts flowing. That is, the women who claim they don't feel anything, that's nonsense. They don't know what they're saying. Our Chachamim are more trustworthy. They don't lie. The women are not lying, they just don't understand. So they are feeling an opening, they just, it's being masked by other sensations. They're not concentrating enough, there's so much distraction, but there is a Hargasha going on. A fourth approach is taken by Rav Elyashiv. In his opinion, women today indeed do not experience an Hargasha the same way that women did in earlier times. Rather, Rav Elyashiv writes that even according to Torah law, the significance of the Hargasha stems from its place as a symptom of menstruation. For women who never experienced a specific symptom, there's no great import to its absence. And those women experience their ritual impurity midaraisa even without a Hargasha. And Rav Willig accepts this approach. This is in a sefer called The Long Concepts of Niddah, which is a book put out by Yeshiva University. by Rav Tzvi Sobolovsky, who's the main author. There are those who remember Rav Tzvi Sobolovsky gave a series of shiurim at Yavna, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And also had a series of 90 CDs on Hilchos Niddah. And I remember going through some of those and taking notes on that. This is way back then. And he eventually, I guess, all of that data was put into this sefer, The Laws and Concepts of Niddah. And there Rav Willig writes, the Aruch HaShulchan assumes that women today are distracted and therefore unaware of the sensation that must accompany Niddah blood. This position is difficult. The Gemara states that a woman awakens from her sleep when the sensation of Niddah blood occurs. Women today generally do not awaken. Why is there a Niddah by Torah law today? Which is the question we've been dealing with tonight. So the Rashba writes that it is the normal way of women to feel sensation when the Niddah blood appears. One can suggest that if nowadays it is normal to have appeared without the sensation of earlier generations, the woman is Niddah by Torah law since she sees blood normally. Rav El Yoshev and Rav Willig reference the case of a newborn baby girl, which can sometimes bleed in small amounts and render a Niddah by Torah law. In such a case, there's no argasha. So this may support the contention that a woman is still a Niddah by Torah law if it is common to bleed without argasha. It should be noted that the reason why the question of whether the Niddah blood is considered significant by Torah law or rabbinic law is that according to rabbinic law, in many cases, blood seen on colored garments is not problematic. Thus, a woman without her argasha may not even be considered Niddah at all if it was only rabbinic. But since we've learned tonight that we don't treat it rabbinically, we treat it midoraisa, we would not have that leniency. Now we'll go back to the question we started off tonight with a hargasha without bleeding. Remember, that was the Tzurba Sadeshan, who said that a woman feels something, she checks, and maybe she only found some white discharge. Would she be a Niddah, right? We've explored the case of determining the status of a Niddah when hargasha is absent. What about the opposite? Is a hargasha so significant that the hargasha alone can affect tumah even in the absence of a discharge? The Tzurba Sadeshan answers that a woman who experiences a hargasha is indeed considered impure on a deraisa level. Nira, the isha dehirgisha, a woman who has a sensation, and then badka achakach, then she checks, she does an internal bedika cloth examination. V'lo matzasa klum, and she found herself clean, still says the Tzurba Sadeshan yesh l'tama, she should be tameh. Devada yatsa tipas dam kechardo, there must have been a spot of blood. It dissolved. The argasha svar doraisahi. This argasha is significant to make it doraisa. As long as she doesn't have a stomach ache or other reasons why she might have had that sensation. The Shulchan Aruch cites this opinion of the Tzurba Sadeshan, but without ruling definitively. Shulchan Aruch in Yoredea Kuf Tzadik. If she feels her uterus open, he says there's a yesh, there's a Tzurba Sadeshan, but he doesn't come down and say what? The discussion of the Tzurba Sadeshan relates to this type of argasha discussed above, experience the sensation that one's uterus is opened. The Achronim debate whether the same ruling applies equally to all three types of argasha, like the ones we learned tonight, feeling of moist flow or shuddering. The Piskei Tshuva cites the Chochmas Sodom, who holds that it does not apply to the argasha of shuddering, since that may be attributed to other factors. The Chassam Sofer argues that with regard to the argasha of Niddah as well, women would not become a Niddah from it if no blood accompanied it. So the Achronim are more mekel. Says the Piskei Tshuva, the cause of B'chachmas Adam, aval bargasha shenizdazu evareha, if she shuddered her limbs, if she checked and didn't find anything tahora, shetalin and zubashar mikrim, we are toilet, we connect those symptoms of shuddering to something else, not to this. Although the argasha may be significant even when a woman does not see any discharged blood, the Shulchan Aruch states that a hargasha will not render her ritually impure if it is accompanied by a neutral discharge, a discharge with no signs of blood. In such an event, she may safely presume that the cessation was triggered by the neutral discharge, and there's no reason to question her status. The Ein Torah Lamar 11, if what comes out of the Bedika cloth is white, the Chen Mara Yark, or if it was green, Afilu Kamara Shava or Azov, or if it was like wax or gold colored, the Kol Sheken HaYarok Kekresi or Kasov, or if it's green like leeks or herbs. So all of those would be colors that would keep her tohor. Says the Ramah, the Kain Mara Shekorim Beloshon Ashkenaz blue, right? If it was blue, Bichlal Yark, it's considered green. Vafilu Yesh Bo Smichus Dam, and even if the viscosity was of blood, but it's not the color, it's very thick, Vafilu Yegisha Sheniftach Makora, and even if she felt an opening of her cervix, Ubad Kamiyadu Matzamar Salalu Tahora. Very important halacha here in the Shulchan Aruch we just learned. V'chein Iker, says the Ramah, that we paskin that way, the Beis Yosef, the Tur, and not like the Machmirim who say that if it's thick like blood, we would be mitami her. Just an aside, there are comments that appear to be written in the Ramah that can be found in the text of the Shulchan Aruch, because normally the Ramah is written in Rashi's script, and but they do not contain the Haggah in Hebrew. In this instance, the Hebrew text will state Ramah, as it does here to highlight this from the regular comments of the Ramah, which are introduced with the word Haggah. Just that's why you notice sometimes the editors of the Tzurba Rabbanan here have used the term Ramah, and sometimes the normal reference about Haggah. Now, a woman generally does not become a Niddah on a Torah level without a Hargasha. Nevertheless, the Gemara Niddah mentions that one who sees blood when performing a Medika becomes a Niddah, or must begin counting again if she's in her Sheva Nekiyim, since she may have experienced the Hargasha while performing the Bedika. But the contact with the examining cloth masked the Hargasha. So that's a huge chumrah that we accept, i.e., if a woman during the Bedika cloth sees blood, she's Tamei Niddah, Minat Torah, because we assume that the checking of the Bedika cloth, so that's different than, for example, she feels the opening and then she sees blood flowing out of her without a Bedika cloth. So there we had this debate. Did she have a Hargasha? Did she not have a Hargasha? So maybe we had a question, is it Daraisa or Rabbanan? Here, if a woman sees blood by an internal examination, it's always assumed that she had a Hargasha. Who's here? Toshma. If she had a Bedika cloth under her pillow, this is Gemara in Masechta Niddah. V'nimtza lavdam. What is that? Is somebody at my door? V'nimtza lavdam, and there's blood found on that cloth. Im ogul, if it's circular tohor. The im moshuch, if it's an elongated streak like tummy. So the Gemara wants to say, Echidami, what's the case? Ida argisha, if she had a hargasha, agula my tohor. Well, who cares if it's round or not round? If she had a hargasha and she has blood, then clearly she's tame. Ela lav de lo argisha. Yet she had no hargasha. Yet uktani mashach tame. Well, if she just found it on the cloth and she without hargasha, why is she tame midaraisa? The Gemara says lo olam da argisha. She had hargasha. But Eimer Agashas ate Havloi. But it was masked when she checked herself. So if it's a streak, that's clearly from her body. Ogul, but if it's round, it's not necessarily. It might have been from a louse that was killed there. We're going to see that's sometimes why you have round drops of blood. The Shulchan Aruch rules this way too. Ha'isha shebodka atzma be'ed, a woman that checked herself with a bedika cloth, a cloth, v'nimtza lav afilu tipa kachardo, and there's even a mustard seed worth of blood, bein ogel bein mashach tmeya, whether it's round, whether it's streaked, it's tamei. V'chein adin kishabodka bo v'nachto bekufsa. Let's say she checked herself and put it in a box and didn't check the box until later. V'acharsha bodkoisa u'matzal of dam kolshu bein mashach bein ogel tmeya. So this is this concept that seeing blood through a bedika cloth as opposed to it flowing on its own, it's automatically assumed that there was a hargasha. Now, Rav David Yosef in Taras HaTahara summarizes the practical halacha concerning a stain found on a bedika cloth within the context of the laws of ketomim, stains which render women impure only on a rabbinic level. He notes that all of the standard guidelines and leniencies relevant to stains found on a garment, like her underwear, which will be discussed in detail in the next year, do not apply to a stain found on a bedika cloth, which may render a woman a need on a biblical level based on the Gemara law. All the various leniencies, if we find blood on her clothing, that's when this spot of blood wasn't found when she did an internal examination with a cloth. If she started off with a clean white bedika cloth and she checks herself inside, and she sees blood on this bedika cloth, if it's placed in the vaginal canal, so she's a suffix, certainly. Remember, because the question is, did she have a hargasha or not? So we said, well, she could always have a hargasha, which was masked by the bedika cloth insertion, because that renders, a sensation. So at worst, it's suffix midoraisa. Well, suffix midoraisa is treated like midoraisa, because suffix midoraisa is lechumra. I feel hayal kesem cotton biyoitzer, even though the spot is small. I feel hayal in the art, even if it's on paper, or shayal beget sivoni, if it's on a colored. Why are we saying all these things? Because we're going to see. Kesem has a lot of leniencies. That, for example, if you find a spot on a dark underwear or colored underwear, it's not going to have the same din as if it was found on a white underwear. But if that's a woman wearing it as a garment, that's not inserted internally. Here, the halacha is teaching us that inserting a bedika cloth takes it out of the realm of kesem. You don't have the leniencies of kesem. Vafilo omeres shelo yergisha, and even if we ask her, I didn't feel anything, it's still going to be tamei. Rakim lo ichnisai bifnim klal. The only time is, let's say she didn't insert it internally. She put a cloth, let's say, externally, right at the opening of her vaginal canal. L'rakin chasma bechutz, then eina tmeya. So that would not render her tummy if there's a small drop of blood there, if there wasn't an internal examination. For example, let's say it's smaller than a size that normally a kesem has to be to render her tummy midrabanon. Another manner in which a woman may become a niddah, even without argasha, is through bleeding as a result of an internal medical examination. She goes to the doctor and he does a cervical procedure. This subject is discussed in more detail in this volume. Well, what about the different colors, the maros, that perhaps when we were younger, we were sent on a mission with to show to a rabbi a bedika cloth of a certain color. What's going on with these colors? Another condition necessary for becoming a niddah is that a discharge must fit the halachic criteria of blood, which is defined based on its color. The Mishnah Niddah lists 5 types of reddish colors that qualify as halachic blood. The spectrum includes black, as blood will darken and claim a black like hue when it ages and oxidizes. Accordingly, if a woman discovers a blackened discharge, it's considered blood and renders her impure. The Mishnah Niddah, Chameshas damim tmeim bi'isha, 5 types of adom, red, ashachor, black, ukikeren karkom, like the karkom flower, ukimeme adama, like water which runs over red earth, ukimazuk, like diluted red wine. Beishabay omrim av kimeme tilsim. Tilsim is like fenugreek. Ukimeme basar tzli, or roast, the juices that flow off a roasted meat. But Beis Hillel metarim in that case. Then what about yaruk, green? Akavi b'mahalal metame. V'chachamim metarim. So it's machloikas tanoim. So it's apparent from the Mishnah that any colors of blood discharge that are not one of the 5 would not render a woman a niddah. The Gemara derives the source of this assumption based upon psukim that allude only to 4 types of blood. How do we know that there's some bloods that would be not tamei? Dilma kol dam dasa maybe any blood that comes is tamei. Amar Chama bar Yosef, Amar Moshiach, Amar krok ki palei mimcha davar lamishpat, bein dam ledam. The Gemara darshans bein dam tor ledam tamei. There's some blood that the Rav is going to look at. He's going to say, it's not tamei, it's tor. How do we know that these are tor and these are tamei? Amar vod Amar kra. Vayiru moav mineged et hamayim adamim kedam. It's got to be a reddish color like blood. What lememer the dam adamu, ema adam the sulo. Maybe there wouldn't be any other colors. Maybe not even black, right?
But they're making a judgment call when they check when they check everything, the underclothes. Someone brings in a clothes row, and he looks at it. He's not sure about it. Then all of a sudden he gives an opinion. Says it's okay, but it turns out it wasn't okay. Is he punished for that? What is his? What is the halacha on that? Or he shouldn't give an opinion.
Jerry, no, a Rav is protected from Shamayim. Jerry asked the question: if someone went to a Rav with the underwear and a question on a color, and the Rav paskind leniently and really made a mistake. So first of all, who would know that a mistake was made? Only, Hashem. So it's all shogeg. If the rabbi legitimately,
okay, and all of a sudden,
well, all of a sudden what?
she's having relations with her husband that night, and right even before the act, it starts bleeding.
Well, then if she starts bleeding, they wouldn't have relations. If they start bleeding during the act, so that there's a Gemara. You're a shogeg. You have to bring a korban chatas. So that we have all those in. Now a Rav who negligently, for example, in money cases, in a monetary case, might have to pay money if he owed money, that kind of thing, like malpractice. Okay.
Now I'm just wondering whether or not the Qumrah, are they more lenient or more?
So we're gonna look at this. We'll learn about it. Amar vavo, Amar kra, damea, harekan arba. Damea is plural 2. You have 2 words damea, so that's 4. For Gemara vadan chamisha, you have 5. Amar chanina, shachar adamu. It's really red. El shaloka, it became aged, so now it looks black. But there's really 4 types of blood. We see that strictly speaking, only 4 shades of red blood render ritual impurity. But distinguishing between these different shades is difficult. The Rosh writes that for this reason, no one has the expertise to assess the different shades of red anymore. And all of them render a woman impure. The Rosh, from the year 1300, he already told us that we are not Bekiyim in this thing. If it's red, any kind of reddish color, it's going to be tummy. Now, are white and green the only colors that are permitted then? Now let's just read the Rosh. Uvidoras halalu ein bakipam aroitz damim. We're not expertly showing al chachmas olafri ben daladim Our Chachamim are not expert anymore to separate from different types of dam. Says the Rosh Afilu b'mei Chachmei Hashas. Even in the Gemara time, Ayumina Chachamim Shayulim Noam Laris Damim. There were Rabbanim, Jerry, who refused to check. They said, we're not expert enough to check. And therefore it's red, it's Tomei. Kol Sheken Ayidna. Certainly now, Shein L'tar Shum Dam Anoite L'Marad Mumis. We should never, if there's some kind of redness in it, it's going to be Tomei. In Lo Shei Lavan V'Yara Kamarazah. If it's white or green, similar to gold, yellow, those are permitted. Now, are white and green the only colors? In the Beis Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo, Beis Yosef, remember, is the commentary on the Tur, and then eventually he wrote the Shulchan Aruch. Rav Yosef Karo explains that white and green are not the exclusive permitted colors. The same status is given to all colors that do not have a reddish shade in them. And he adopts the same position in Shulchan Aruch, which we cited in Shores 32. Right? In Shores 32,
What do we say with the
we
black?
said blue would be permitted, or wax, or yellow, or white.
Yeah,
Those are all permitted. That would not be, that we would not make her tummy based on
and
that.
what do we say about black? Exactly.
Black is like red, which just became oxygenated. The Shach summarizes the development of the halacha. The Shach is the commentary of the Shulchan Aruch. He said, "Min haTorah eina tmeya elahe minei maros." Torah law, there are 5 types of colors of blood that would make you tummy. The Chachamim ichmirim shelo litos ben dam ledam. The Chachamim already didn't make differentiation. V'asur kol mara hanoite ladmumis. They already prohibited any color that looked a little red. V'chshiru kol mara she'en l'sfeiko badmumis klal. A color that didn't have any kind of redness in it would have been permitted. Now, the contemporary poskim, what do they do about this? The Darchei Tahara discuss today's guidelines. Kvar bizman Gemara, hayu harbe min hachachamim shelo rotzu livdok maras damim. There were already people in the Gemara didn't think it was the right thing to check blood. Biglal dekuyos avchana shebein adam laadam v'bein shachar l'shachar. The various nuances between certain red shades and black. V'im heim lo badku, anachnu bevadoim bikim harbe pachos mehem. We are much less expert. Ve'ein lanu lachshir shum mare me'amaris hanoitim laadam l'shachar. We certainly should not permit anything that is looking like red or black. Bein imheim behirim, if it's bright, ubein imim keim, if they're dull. Ushar tzvoim, other colors, she'enam noitim la'adom v'la'shachar klal, other colors that are not red or black, anu mitarim, we say they're tor. Bein imheim smichim, bein imheim atzulim, whether they're thick or thin. So what are the common colors that he sees? Lavan, white. I feel like a lavan garment, not complete white. Elakamar beged lavan shenaf lavavak, like we said,
Yeah.
a white garment that there's some dust on it. Vayedei zehu chasel livnit. It's not as white as it was. Toira. She'ein tzeva kazeh ba mitzeva adam. It doesn't come from red. Tzaho, which is yellow, which the Chachamim referred to as green. Kemar zav, like gold. O keshava, like wax. O ke'etrog, like an etrog. O kechalmon beitza, like the yellow of an egg. Afilu keha, even if it's dark, it's tohar. Now, what about like a leek? Or, dam yar kabotzel, or kaasar, like grass, the chadome, tohor. A4, which is gray, tohor. Vimunot l'shachar, if it's turning black, yesh oisrim v'yesh matirim. V'nagul ha'akel, the minig is to be mako. Achenu doma l'shachar, if it's similar to black, machmirim. Ulam gam b'mikra kazerotzu shetishal l'chacham, ad shebekia biguni ha'shachar. You should consult with an authority until the woman, let's say the woman is checking herself, she should go to a chacham first until she gets proficiency by black. Okay, let's just finish up. Rav Binyamin Forst, in his 2-volume work on Hilchot Niddah, notes that brown stains are complex. because there's differing opinions. Brown is the subject of much disagreement among poskim. Some poskim consider brown a lighter variation of black. Accordingly, when Chazal ruled that black is tummy, they meant brown as well. In addition, blood stains on a bdika cloth and garments eventually turn brown. Also, some browns have a clear reddish hue. Some browns border on black. Others differentiate between different shades of brown. For example, the color of chestnut or coffee with milk would be accepted, according to their opinion. Some rabbanim accept brown on a regular bdika, but not on a regular hefsek tara. Hefsek tara is the very white cloth you need to do when you, right before you start your counting your 7 clean days. A hefsek tara, being the bdika which establishes that the flow has stopped, must be tar beyond doubt. One must show any brown to a rav. An experienced rav is able to recognize a shade of brown that is indicative of faded blood. So they give you an advisory. Due to the complexity involved, determine whether the color of his stain is problematic. Special training is necessary. In any case where the color of his stain is not clear, a couple is encouraged to consult with a rabbinic authority who will give them a ruling. I think we covered a lot of material tonight.
Yeah.
I think, and does anybody have any questions, comments, issues?
Mhm.
No. Okay, then.